What is up, Optimal Health Warriors, and welcome to episode 52 of the Optimal Health Show. Are potatoes a superfood for optimal health? In this episode, you'll be learning which potato is the most nutritionally dense, best way to cook potatoes, the whole deal about resistant starch and prebiotics, should you eat the skin of the potato, and how many potatoes should you eat a day? Now, if you haven't done already, please head over to Ameer.com, where over 40,000 downloads of the Optimal Health Blueprint have already been downloaded. You'll discover how to optimize your hormones, boost your IQ, and get strong in 21 days. Now, our special guest today is Wendy Meyers. She is the head writer and chief eating officer of Live to 110. She's also a certified holistic health and nutritional coach in Los Angeles, having attended the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York and graduated with a degree in entrepreneurism from the University of Southern California. She's also certified in hair mineral analysis for the purpose of designing nutritional balancing programs for her clients. So, warriors, please sit back and relax and enjoy today's amazing episode with Wendy Meyers. Hey Wendy, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy that you're on the show today because you sent me an article, I think it was a couple of days ago, to tell you the truth, and I was reading it. The article was titled, Are Potatoes a Superfood? I'm like, well, number one, I love potatoes.
Me too.
Right? Number two, I truly believe potatoes hold great value for a lot of people, and I'm quite interested and fascinated about the topic we're about talking today. So what got you started in researching about potatoes as a superfood?
Well, it's just the whole, when I got into the whole ancestral paleo movement and decided to kind of focus my website, live110.com on that, I was thought it was really interesting how Lorraine Cordain, which the very first book I read was The Paleo Diet, said don't eat potatoes, avoid them like the plague. And I thought that's strange. Since that's the number one food that people eat in America. It's the most eaten vegetable. So I just started researching a little bit more, and I was really fascinated by how nutritious potatoes are. And I mean, because of all the low-carb craze going on for the last couple of decades, I've been avoiding potatoes like the plague. I literally did not touch them for a really long time. And so I was really surprised to learn at how they really are a superfood. I mean, there's cultures around the world that the majority of their diet is potatoes. There's been experiments done where people live on nothing but potatoes.
Yeah, the Irish.
For many months. Yeah, I mean, they are nutritious.
Okay, so during your research, was there something you discovered that kind of blew you away? Like, holy shit, I never knew that about the potato.
Well, one of them was really the purple potatoes are the most nutritious ones. That's one thing that I've just learned over, researching and studying vegetables and things like that, that the darker a vegetable, the more nutritious it is. So the purple potatoes are the most nutritious. I love the Peruvian purple potato. There's blue potatoes and red potatoes and the sweet potatoes, the orange ones. But even white potatoes are incredibly nutritious. Even the most common ones, the Idaho russet, are incredibly nutritious.
What's your take on people complaining about, potatoes may cause weight gain with like the glycemic index?
Well, there's two sides of that coin. I mean, there's ways around the glycemic issues with potatoes. And different potatoes have different glycemic indexes. The glycemic index of potatoes ranges from 50 to 100, depending on the type. And the white ones tend to have a higher glycemic index, but the colored ones are lower. But the way you cook them also affects the glycemic index. Boiling actually produces the lowest glycemic index, where frying produces the highest glycemic index, like potato chips and French fries. But then if you cook your potatoes and put them in the refrigerator, that produces more resistant starch and can significantly reduce the glycemic index. And so as far as the weight gain issue, yeah, if you eat just a potato by itself, it will probably raise your blood sugar. But I don't know how many people are doing that. They usually eat potatoes within the context of a meal. And in doing that, when you eat a potato with butter on it, which the only way it should be eaten, with some grass-fed butter or with some vinegar or with oil, sour cream, what have you, some fats, that lowers the glycemic index. And when you're eating within the context of meal, you're usually getting some sort of fats, which reduces the glycemic load in your body and reduces how high your blood sugar will raise. But then on top of that, you have this resistant starch. On the other side of the coin, potatoes have resistant starch in them, and that feeds the good bacteria in your intestines. And when you have healthy gut bacteria, that reduces weight gain or can prevent obesity, what have you. So it's not always that simple. It's not, this is high carb, it's going to cause weight gain. It's not always that simple.
No, it's never that black and white.
No.
Some people have IBS or Crohn's and they may have to stay away from potatoes. Other people, they benefit from it greatly.
Absolutely. It's all, you just have to see if it works for you. Potatoes don't work for everybody.
No, I'll give you an example with me. I don't do well with sweet potatoes ever.
Oh, really?
Ever. I get bloaty, I get gassy. However, when I have white potatoes, regular white potatoes that I grew up with, I never ate sweet potato. I didn't even know what they were. I feel great, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I do well with all of them. I'm a garbage disposal.
Now, you mentioned earlier there was a purple potato, right, from Peru.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many potatoes are out there?
There are a lot. I've heard anywhere from 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 different varieties. And so there's a lot of potatoes. There's a lot more than what we're exposed to here in, Northern America. People tend to just eat the white russet potatoes, or we have your orange sweet potato. There's not a big variety. There's maybe 4 or 5, maybe at the grocery store. At the farmer's market, I usually see about 10 different kinds of potatoes. But in Peru, the birthplace of potatoes, there's thousands. All kinds of crazy potatoes. And they're really rich, really dark colors, very, very nutrient dense. And there's even a tribe, the Peruvian Quechua, that have 75% of their diet is potatoes.
Wow.
And they're not exactly dropping like flies from diabetes. Like they're healthy, they don't have disease.
Are they a lean type of tribe, or more or less kind of on the chunkier side?
I believe they're lean.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe they're lean.
All right, that's awesome. Now, what's your take on the skin of the potato? Some say peel them, some say keep them on.
Well, the reason there's this big frenzy, if you want to call it that, about the skins of the potatoes is they have saponins in them, or they're also called glycoalkaloids. And Loren Cordain makes a big hullabaloo about them, saying, they cause gut permeability and they cause all kinds of intestinal distress. But he's referring to in vitro studies in a test tube, what's happening with these molecules in a test tube. But obviously that's not what's happening in our digestive tract. What happens in our digestive tract is in studies it's shown that saponins and glycoalkaloids just disintegrate in the human digestive tract. So I don't really think this whole saponin theory, this fear of saponins in the skin, is really valid. Certainly there are some people that are sensitive to them, and potentially they could cause gut permeability. I doubt it. But there's just two sides of that coin. But also there's an issue with sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. It's one of those things where different potatoes have different amounts of saponins in them. Like the Snowden potato has the highest amount of saponin in the skins, but those are usually used for potato chips, which we know we want to avoid anyways. But if you're really worried about them, you can just peel the potato. But unfortunately, most of the nutrients, a lot of the nutrients in a potato are in the skin. I eat the skin for that reason.
And what's your take on organic versus non-organic for potatoes?
Definitely potatoes. It's part of the Dirty Dozen, the environmental working group's Dirty Dozen. They're like little sponges. They definitely absorb, the pesticides and other chemicals in the soil. So I wouldn't touch non-organic potatoes with a 10-foot pole.
Maybe a 20-foot pole.
Yeah, steer clear those.
Now, Dr. Paul Jaminet talks about, he's the author of the Perfect Health Diet. He talks about recommending that at least you eat about one potato a day. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with him. I love Paul Jaminet. I love his book, The Perfect Health Diet. And it makes perfect sense. What he talks about how we should be eating those for fuel, because the starch in potatoes breaks down to glucose. It gives us a real clean, pure form of energy, and doesn't give us any, potentially liver harming fructose. Different schools of thought on the fructose ideas. But I think they're a wonderful source of carbs from carbohydrates. For me, I can't do a strict paleo diet or ancestral diet. My mind has to have a lot of fuel to work. So if I don't eat carbs like potatoes, I
Yeah,
will
but there's my problem right there.
crash.
Like this whole idea of strict paleo meaning to be low carb. Where does
Yeah,
this connotation come from? You know what I mean? Like there's
thanks
so
for
many
day.
different epigenetic tribal variants of the world.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, it came originally from Laurent Corday. He was just talking about how, and of course, today most people are not talking about a strict paleo diet. But so for me, I can't do that. My brain just goes bonkers, and I'll go on a big sugar binge. Like, my body is like, you bitch, you are eating sugar right now, okay? Because my brain has to have it.
Yeah.
The willpower overcomes biology. So my body's telling me that I have to eat potatoes or rice or I
What's your
don't eat gluten.
bacteria for maybe some, lactobacillus or acidophilus? They're craving the resistant starch inside of the potato.
Something's craving it. So I eat potatoes on a regular basis, and if I don't, then I have problems personally.
How do you make your potatoes?
I like to roast them. I definitely like to roast them. Sometimes I do boil them, making certain dishes. I know boiling is not the best. Potatoes are a little bit different. I never boil vegetables, but you can boil potatoes and not lose too much nutrition. And I also like to boil them because it does reduce the glycemic index of them. So what I tend to do is I'll boil them and then I'll put them in the refrigerator overnight and then I'll eat them because that is the lowest glycemic index possible that you can get with potatoes.
What's your take on baking them with like coconut oil?
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, baking them is amazing. I mean, it's not, you don't have as much of a lower glycemic potential with baking them, but they're still totally fine. I mean, I love eating baked potatoes. So,
What's your take on potato powder? Because I've seen like the potato flour out there kind of replacing, say, the traditional wheat flour.
yeah, well, I think that's great. That's a great way to avoid gluten. Do whatever you can to avoid gluten is my thoughts on that. But again, it's just a powdered potato. I mean, is it the most ideal way to eat potatoes? No, but I think yeah, I think potato powder is probably flour is better than almond flour. I think people doing an ancestral diet or avoiding gluten, they get too many nut flours, and that
Mm.
can give them too much omega-6 fats. I think people have to kind of back off on the omega-6s with the nut flours. So potato flours could be a good replacement for that.
I think the paleo world goes nuts for nuts.
Oh yeah, way too many nuts. I'm not a. I love nuts, but I think people eat way too many.
And they're very problematic food for a lot of people, from oxalic acids to mold. It's like one of the top three mold foods out there.
Oh yeah.
And people don't sprout them properly. They just eat them as is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely believe in sprouting the nuts, and I tend to only eat macadamia nuts and the walnuts, just so that because they're the highest omega-3, lowest omega-6. So I kind of stick to those for the most part. But when I do eat almonds, I eat the sprouted almonds or sprouted almond milk.
Now, are you familiar with oh, no, he's not doctor. John Kiefer. He talks about carb backloading.
I'm not. No.
See, he has something interesting. I've been playing around with him. I had him on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and after the podcast, I went a little bit deeper into the science of it, and I found a lot of studies that he was talking about. It's quite intriguing, actually. is he found through his studies, and obviously all the studies are done on diabetics, is that if you limit your carbs, so let's just talk about potatoes right now. If we're limiting our potatoes throughout the day and actually have it at dinner time, let's say 7 o'clock, your body actually has a better environment to absorb now the glucose and the starches from that potato due to like circadian clocks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite fascinating though. I think if people want to like kind of biohack a little bit more to a different degree of health, they can try limiting the carbs throughout the day and just having it at nighttime.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have heard you talk about that on your podcast before, because I do listen to your podcast. And that's a really interesting concept, because there's the traditional status quo is if you eat carbs at night, then that could raise your blood sugar and your cortisol and maybe keep you up. But I honestly don't know what is correct. I mean, everyone is totally different. And I think for many people, I mean, that sounds like a really interesting concept that I think people need to try out and see what works for them.
Yeah, I've been trying it out for a while and it works great with me. I have some clients as well that we've been trying it out and it doesn't work. I really think it depends on your gut biome
Yeah,
and how you react to it and how your circadian phenotypic clocks are set.
yeah.
But some people they report deep sleep. It may be due to the potassium and serotonin boosts. Others report the opposite, as you mentioned. So you'll have an increase of insulin, obviously, and an increase of cortisol, which will kind of keep you more or less awake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like everyone's totally different. And for me, I tend to either not eat dinner, or I eat an early breakfast and a late lunch. And then I kind of fast after that. So I tend to be one of those people where a big dinner doesn't sit well with me, so everybody's different.
How did you discover that dinner doesn't sit well with you?
Well, I just found that if I included dinner, if I eat the 3 meals a day, that I tend to gain weight. And if I eat too close to bedtime, I don't sleep as well. For whatever reason, I definitely have some blood sugar things going on where I feel like I can't eat too close to bedtime, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
how long this been going on for?
Um, it's something I really never clued into until maybe a year or two ago. Yeah, but it's probably something that's been going on for a while, but I didn't clue into it until like recently.
That's fascinating, though. So you're basically just having breakfast and lunch and just completely skipping dinner.
I mean, I'm just not hungry.
Uh-huh.
I eat a really nutrient dense breakfast, a really nutrient dense late lunch, so to speak, at 2 or 3 p.m. And I mean, of course, I could eat another meal. There's definitely room for another meal. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just not hungry. So sometimes I will have some bone broth, some chicken broth that I make. But I do, for the most part, try not to eat dinner. I just feel better not doing that. But that's just me. Some people feel better skipping breakfast and eating lunch and dinner.
Yeah, it all depends on your biochemistry and what works for you. We're all
Yeah,
individuals, right?
yeah, for sure.
Now, what's your take on athletes and potatoes? Do you think potatoes are the best carb source for athletes, or are there other types of carbs athletes should include?
I absolutely think, since I'm such an athlete, I know all about carb loading and carbs for athletes. I'm not. I'm a couch potato. But I think that carbohydrates from potatoes are a really important source of fuel for athletes. Because I'm not the hugest fan of fruits for carbs, because I think there's just a lot of problems with fruits. I think fruits are really high sugar, and the fruits today are grown to, are hybridized to have a really, really high sugar levels, which are problematic for people. So I just tend to tell people to eat nutrient dense berries, stick to that low sugar nutrient density. But for potatoes, they're a perfect source of glucose to keep, an athlete running. Of course, rice is fine too. Any kind of non-gluten grain, I'm a big fan of. But I think some people have problems digesting rice. So I think potatoes are just a nice, pure, clean source of fuel.
When you mean by rice, are you talking about just general rice or like wild rice or a specific rice?
I tend to be a fan of what Paul Jaminet recommends, is the long grain white rice. I think that breaks down, it has fewer toxins in it. If you have the bran of the rice, there's some toxins in that. A lot of people don't have very good digestion, so they have a hard time breaking down brown rice, especially if they have autoimmune, like they can't digest brown rice. So I'm a big fan of just eating the long grain white rice, which has a lower glycemic index than some of the other white rices.
How would you prepare your long white rice?
I have a rice cooker. So I just put it in my rice cooker with a pat of butter and let it cook away.
Do you pre-soak your rice?
I don't always. I should. I know that I should because you have to soak it overnight with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Is ideal. It's a Weston A. Price way to do it. I don't always do that. No, I'm naughty.
Now, would you recommend everybody adds that butter? What happens if we don't have access to butter? Say in Canada, it's kind of hard, or I think it may be even illegal. I forget the laws, but to get like 100% grass-fed butter.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you got grass up there, right?
Oh, we got plenty of grass, but that's a whole different story.
Oh no. Well, if you can't get grass-fed butter, just have it shipped to you illegally from the United States.
That's what we're all about. We're about illegal activities.
Yeah, sometimes you got to break the law to get healthy food. It's a sad fact.
It's funny, eh? Like, it's easier for me to get drugs than get raw milk. Straight up.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate. I've got raw milk right down the street, and that's what I eat. I'm not so tolerant of dairy, but I eat raw. I definitely eat raw grass-fed butter on a daily basis. I actually do the bulletproof coffee thing.
Oh, that's nice.
Dave Ashford got me addicted to that, so I had that this morning.
He's a pusher, isn't he? He pushes stuff on people and he gets them addicted.
Yeah, I am addicted to it. I like it. It makes sense to me. The whole brain fuel thing. But yeah, so grass-fed dairy is wonderful. Grass-fed butter is awesome. But if you can't get that, then yeah, you can do the coconut oil, or you just make it plain. You don't have to put any oils or butters in the rice to cook it.
I'll tell you what I do. I cook it with bone broth.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's a very good
yeah. My grandmother used to do that. So I just copied a recipe, and it's pre-soak, as you mentioned, either with apple cider vinegar the night before and distilled water, or if you have fresh water, whatever. Mm-hmm. And rinse it out the next day a couple of times. And then you literally cook it with pure bone broth.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You know what? I don't know why that never occurs to me. I make rice and I make bone broth, but I just, I have some brain fog going on sometimes, so I forget to mix the two.
Brain fog is here every day, I get it once in a while. It all depends on the situation.
Yeah. Now, if I don't have my potatoes, my bulletproof coffee, I get brain fog.
That's it. Do you have any final thoughts when it comes to potatoes?
Well, I'm just one of those people, if, figure out if it works for you. I don't believe that low-carb craze, or people have been avoiding potatoes for so long. I say try out some potatoes. Search for some different kind of potatoes. Just forget the white potato. Try out some purple Peruvian potatoes, some blue potatoes. The new potatoes, the little red ones, are very nutrient dense as well. They're so easy to make. Just pop them in the oven, and they're done in 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And just to try them out and see if they work for you, because they're really, I think, an important part of people's diets. And like Paul Jaminet says, he wants people to eat a pound a day of potatoes. A little bit too many potatoes for me.
That's a lot. That's like 3 potatoes or something, isn't it?
It's a lot of potatoes. But if you're a very active person, that's probably a good idea for you.
If you had to summarize, what would be your number one optimal health tip to tell somebody?
The number one tip, definitely, I think a healthy diet is really important. Whole foods, real foods, ancestral type of diet. But you can eat the healthiest diet in the world, but you may not achieve the level of health that you seek if you don't detox your body. And that's what I'm all about. That's what my website, live-to110.com, is really all about. Is really focusing in on detoxing your body safely and effectively. Because today we're bombarded with, we have 100,000 chemicals in our environment. There's industrial dumping and pollution. And so we just absorb chemicals and heavy metals in our air, food, and water. So I think it's incredibly important for people to have a lifelong detoxification strategy in order to be healthy.
True that. Wendy, where can people find more information about you?
Well, you can find me on live110.com. I'm also on YouTube. I've got a modern paleo cooking show I just started on YouTube at Wendy Live to 110. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter at I Will Live to 110. I've got a podcast on iTunes, the Live to 110 podcast, that's also on my website that you can find. And that's about it. And I've got a book coming out soon called The Modern Paleo Survival Guide, where I talk about how you have to diet, have the right diet and lifestyle and detox, and you'll survive and live to 110.
Sweet, sign me up.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If you want, I'll do a free hair mineral analysis on you. If you want to check it out and see where you're at.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's set it up.
Okay, great.
Cool. All right, Wendy, thank you so much, and have a great day.
All right, thank you, Ameer.
Bye-bye.